Well, first off, on behalf of Jim's family, thank you so much for being here today. And so we have his daughter Kathy, who's in the back here, and his daughter Megan was not able to come back up to Spokane, but we're hoping to kind of record a few things so that she and other members of the family can participate in some kind of way with what we're doing today. Before I go any farther, I'm just holding all this foil in my hand so I don't forget. But we have got so much food, and there's even more. Because I can't count and had no idea. So take extra plates, wrap them good, and hopefully enjoy some additional, you won't have to cook tonight or tomorrow or so. So I'm going to put this, well, I guess I can't put it.
Here, give it to me.
There we got it, handled. So look for the foil. Thank you so much, everybody that's here. And it's really remarkable that, folks that knew our brothers and sisters, I guess that's true. But from Pat's childhood friend, Kathy, Cook, that's in the back there, and people from the neighborhood today, Sherry and Ginny and Nancy, and people from the neighborhood from back when Kathy Coombs and I first met up at the age of 3.5. So it goes way back. And so it's really so nice to, and new friends and friends from over the years. So hoping that you're introducing yourselves to everybody. And I have to thank so many people for getting this put together, because God knows I wouldn't have been able to pull it off. So thank you, especially. And I don't want to forget anybody, but for Marilyn, my Lord, and putting so many things together, and Joe, friend of our brother-in-law Roger, since when they were in junior high school, who helped us today too. Michaela, from so many years, Cheryl and Joan for helping to get the food out. Together now, I don't cook. So I'm just going to kind of narrate what you've sort of seen. This was the Doherty family in Minnesota, and my dad, I think, is the little kid that's behind this baby kind of spread off on the right-hand side.
Here we go.
That looks like he's got a
pointer.
Oh, I got a pointer? Okay. Who looks like he... Okay, over farther.
Here's a pointer.
I can't use it. Where is it?
High-tech mama, right there.
No,
not that. Not that.
Anyway.
This one right there.
Okay.
Which one is he? Okay, move my hand. There you go.
I can do that much. Up. There he is.
Okay.
Francis Doherty, at a tender age. He was one of 12 kids. And yeah, so grew up in southern Minnesota. And so that was their family at a certain point. And then we can click to the next picture. Yeah.
Oh, no, that's me doing it.
Yeah. And so that's my grandma and grandpa Doherty. I never met them. They had really died before I was born. But so they are part of the family. And then the next picture is going to show you a slide from Niagara Caves. And my dad and a couple of his brothers were playing baseball in the neighbor's field on the farm. And they had lost a bunch of little piglets. And so at one point they heard all these squeals coming in, and they followed it, and then they realized they were in way over their heads and went back and got some adults to come. And it resulted really in the finding of the Niagara Cave system, which is still operational today. And I was only there once when I was about 6 years old. People have weddings and all. This is just one little shot. And it's from an old, it must be about the 1930s, maybe 1940s postcard. So in Niagara Caves. And one year, the cousin that was a teacher in Seattle had a kid in the class that loved caves. And so she just thought, she just looked to see if by chance there was anything about Niagara Caves. And she looked it up, and it said it was founded by a swineherd and his family. So she made copies of that and sent it out to all the relatives for Christmas. So next one. Thank you so much. Okay, and so this would be on my mother's side, or our mother's side. So Teresa, this must have been when they were around the time they were engaged or something, and she taught music, piano, at the Chicago Conservatory of Music. And then my grandfather, Ernest Matthew, is sitting with that bowler, and that bowler now, my brother-in-law Roger has it, but it went through all kinds of costume parties and stuff like that. We needed something to dress up in. That bowler was part of it. So, and then the next one. So this is their wedding picture. So Ernest and Teresa Matthew. And at one point, we can go on to the next one too. At one point, my grandpa and his dear friend Phil Scheid, who was like an extra grandpa to us, took out a ticket. I always thought they bought a dollar ticket. Well, I finally have awakened to the notion that they were part of the homesteaders, and they ended up in North Dakota. I understand my grandma sat on her trunks and the trunk that they had everything in and just cried. What could you do? But by the time they left North Dakota, they had made many friends. And she used to play music for the silent movies, back in Chicago area and Streeter. And so she also played at the Blue Mouse Theater in Makoti, North Dakota. So, and we still have music that tells you when what to play for soldiers coming in, or quiet scenes and stuff. What was kind of funny to me too is that little white dog. I didn't notice that for years and years. And we ended up with 2 little white dogs over the years, and I thought, well, how about that? It must have been something genetic. I don't know. So, and then she taught music in the midst of everything, to include during the Great Depression. It helped them get through for 35 cents a lesson. And she's got that little white dog. But in these little tiny house, to have that piano and the lace in the business. So. Mm-hmm. And that was a winter on top of the house. So, yeah, so things were kind of tricky there. And that was the house when it got bigger. Initially, it was just that right side of it. Okay. Wow. Yeah, can you imagine? And my mom's up there as a little girl with the horses. And go ahead. So, and that was my grandparents, our mother, Bernice. And we can go from there. And that's the grandparents that we knew as kids. My grandpa died when I was 5, and my grandma when I was 9. And Jim remembered a couple weeks before he passed. My hair was just a mess, as often usual. And he said, "Oh, do you remember what Grandma used to say?" And she'd say, "Oh my stars. My hair is just a fright, so I know I need to remember that line." Okay. So we go next. And that's our mom and dad. So Mom moved from North Dakota to Wenatchee, and Dad moved from Minnesota, and so they met and married in Wenatchee, Washington in 1940. Mm-hmm. And that's Jim. It's sweet looking at it, with the two of them looking at each other. And that's Jim, this little boy. And I could see that expression different times, even in, the last years. Yes. And Jim with Bill. Many people didn't realize that Jim was the older of the brothers. He was 1.5 years older than Bill. And he was very worried about something here. So that's Bill. My folks always dressed him alike with something a little different. So I think he got the elephant or so, and Jim got the horse. But they always try to keep it the same. Yeah. And Christmas, they really wonder about him. Dad would always take little trips over to Grand Coulee, and that, especially if company was here from any place. I was never tall enough to take the tour, and then as an adult, when we went over, it was closed. So, yeah. And everybody always wore a hat. So you always had groupings of 3 with hats. because you have to have somebody with that box camera to get a good photo. So Dad's turn as photographer. Go ahead. And that was the three of us, and I came along. We moved into the house when I was 9 months old, on Knox Street. Yeah, in December of 1949. Yeah, and Mom got the whole place cleaned up, got downtown to get the curtains for the rooms, and bought the Christmas toys, wrote the Christmas cards, got everything for the Christmas dinner, and I was just out of the hospital with pneumonia. And so they had moved into the house on December 16th, and she always said if I could only move like that again. So that's how that went. Yeah. Okay. And so the boys on their trike, they always loved things that, wheels and stuff. Yes. And then they were paper boys, and they saved their money and got those, those were really great, those English racers, yeah. Those are quite the bikes. Okay, so our first trip to the ocean, and Dad had said that we'd be going swimming, and that was with Grandma. Our grandpa had died, I think, maybe the fall before this. So Jim's on the right, Bill's on the left, Mom's there, and I'm scowling at the camera, sort of as usual, probably. Okay, so Dad had said, oh yeah, we go swimming. And then we were walking along, and I was saying, well, and he says, well, kids can't go swimming with the water like that, it's so cold. And I said, well, those kids are swimming. He looked out and said, no, those must be dogs or something. And then he said, oh, it's a salmon. So he rolled up his pants and waded out to the sandbar and caught that 12-pound salmon between his fingers that really got kind of cut up, and a little jackknife. No fishing pole, no. So that was his first salmon. And he was hooked on salmon fishing from there on. Yes. But proud. And so everybody got a chance to hold it. I wasn't that impressed because he still couldn't go swimming. So then the next one. There. Mom made those jackets. They were corduroy, kind of burgundy, and same old house. And that one getting a little bigger. And then we can go from there. Grandma kept teaching. They moved to Spokane to be closer to Mom and grandkids. And she had a little house on Glass Street, which is now a huge house. They really built onto it. But it was a little house then, and every spring they would have a piano recital. Jim is with his bow tie. Yeah. Bill was down next to him, I think. Yeah. And they played until Mom and Grandma couldn't take them elbowing each other off the bench. And they really didn't want to go further. But Jim did he had some music in him for playing the piano, and he had his own tune. And it really sounded nice. So, all welcome. And so that's the house that many of you know. And it has stories to tell. This is the arrival of Pat. She's 16 years younger than Jim. And then Bill's holding her there, and I'm scowling on the side in an Easter dress. So now Pat can walk, and there used to be a lot of spruce trees right there at the Hopper's house. So we just got that. And Phil was the man who came across from Alsace-Lorraine with our grandfather, Matthew, and homesteaded with him.
Which one is yours?
Yeah, Phil. We loved it when Phil would come to visit, yeah. He always had toys and jokes. This is when, right after Jim and Penny were married, and they came to visit. And Pat is on the left holding Sammy, little Pomeranian. And when she was 4 years old, my dad had a break from Kaiser, and so we took this huge trip around the country, drove down through California and then across the panhandle of Texas, and then to relatives in St. Louis, and then up through Illinois, Michigan, Minnesota, and so we were on the road, I think, at least 6 weeks. I didn't want to get in the car for a long time afterwards. But when we went to Disneyland for a day, Jim was with us. He was in the service at Fort Ord in San Francisco. He got a little leave and came with us. Look at the prices. And the child's ticket for 12 and under was $2.95. So yeah, and parking all day. So Dad had a great sense of humor, and was going through some of our encyclopedias. I've got to go through them and probably get rid of them. But he would tuck in these little stories and comments. So the gentleman on the left had been in the Senate for 50 years, but he must have retired quite a bit of time before this event. They were celebrating his birthday at the White House. The part you don't see is in the text below, and it said the man's name, and he was celebrating, there was a typo, his 855th birthday. So that's no, you're good. And this is Dad, the Christmas. Kathy was born in October, so the first grandchild, and this would have been December. Penny and Jim and Kathy came over on a bus, and then it was the following March that Dad died. So that was really the time he had to see her. Yeah. And that's Jim and Penny with their little girls. Kathy is the older, and the younger is Megan, who's in Jim's arms in our living room. Jim gave Pat away when she was married because Dad was not there. Pat was just in the 8th grade when Dad died. Mom was 52. Can you imagine all that she did? And so these are the 3 little flower girls, Kathy on the left, and our brother Bill's daughter Liz, and Jim's younger daughter Megan on the right. So, and that's with the family there too. Jim and his girls, his wife, Penny, Mom, and Kathy and Megan, looking debonair, and with Bill as visiting, so the 2 of them, and at another time with Bill. Bill's daughter, Liz, so it'd be Jim's niece, Liz, and her little guy, Tyler. We don't have many current pictures. He's like about 23 now. That was at Mom's 80th birthday. Jim was giving a talk, talking on the microphone. You can see Mom, the second to the left. And we celebrated for Merle Hopkins too, those of you who might have known her, because she had just turned 80. And then Bill's on the right. This is after Mom died, but it was kind of a everybody together opportunity. As Tyler's down there, and so Connie, Jim, Bill, and Roger, Pat, myself, and Tyler, and Jim, and Kathy, and Megan. Yeah. Yeah. And that's Kathy on the left and Megan on the right. Jim's life was his 2 daughters. And Kathy up visiting, and with Megan, and we have a little dog. See, that would have been probably the little dog Mickey. Yeah, with everybody. And the Marie Antoinette room downtown, Jim, and Penny, and Kathy, Megan, and Jim. That's when he was in the last year, I think, with Kathy. And that's a good picture of him. It looks so Jim, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And then so I thought I'd throw in the dogs and them. So here's Pat holding, I don't know if it was Charlie or Mickey because they looked identical. But we lost Mickey, and we started off, oh, here's Charlie Dickens. Okay, it would have been Mickey. That's Mom holding Charlie. We started out calling him Charlie, and pretty soon we're going, you little Dickens. And so he became Charlie Dickens. That was probably about 6 months before Mom passed. And that's Jim with Charlie Dickens. He always said he'd never have a pet rock. That's a Jim thing. Yeah, and he loved animals. And he loved Charlie. Charlie loved him. And this was a nice shot in front of Doherty's. They just took the O off. Okay. And then, oh, back to all those Dohertys. Oh, that's it.
Thank you.
And if anybody would like to share a Jim story, we've got a microphone right here. So if you just come up, then everybody can hear. So.
Otherwise, you're gonna hear Jim singing again.
Yeah, Jim did like to.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Jim did love to sing. How many of you heard him sing before? Oh, yeah, because he'd sing in the yard all the time. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah.
He sang while he was painting.
Yes, he would sing and paint. Yes.
And he was always painting on Jan's house.
Yeah, I know. It was interminable.
Every year.
It always felt like that. It needs it again, but I.
Did he have any voice lessons?
No. She asked, the person asked whether he had any voice lessons. No. Oh, come on up, Steve.
I'll tell a little story.
Okay.
I just moved back here in 2019. I live in San Souci. And I met Jim, and I could just sit and laugh the whole time. His stories just kept going on and on. And when I told this story 3 or 4 times since I've been here, and the manager down at the clubhouse one day, he said, I told her that she couldn't lead ants to a picnic. And I just thought that was so good. And he just would say stuff, and he never cracked a smile. He could tell a story, and you'd be crying, you'd be laughing so hard. And he'd never ever change his motion, and he just the same. And I had went to see him a few months ago, and he couldn't come out and talk to me, but I felt kind of bad I didn't get to go see him another time. But he was a good guy. I wished I would have known him longer, but he always was the best storyteller.
Thanks, Steve. Some of those stories were true, too. Does anybody have anything else that they might like to say?
I'd like to say something.
Oh, okay. Let's see, did you want to say something, Paula?
Sorry, I was a little late.
You're good.
Thanks to do. When is it?
Okay, do you want us to talk?
I don't actually
Oh,
say
okay,
that.
that's fine. I'm going to
If you go right here,
Anyway, what I want to say
That's not too
is,
far away. Oh,
Jim used to go to the Union Medical Center for his care, and he met my spouse there, and they also hooked up with other veterans, and they used to meet at a gas station over on Northwest Boulevard and get together and tell stories, and then gradually the group kind of dissipated because some of them passed away. So Jim started coming over to our house, and then all of a sudden the light came on, and I thought, where do I know this man from? And then I remembered that my neighbor that lives 2 doors away from me, her name is Dolores, and she's 89 years old now, bless her heart. She's still getting around really good and everything, but what was really funny is that back in the day, and I can't remember what year it was in, because Jim was a professional painter. So he painted the garage that was directly behind your house. which was another one of our neighbors that we were. But every once in a while, he would take a break, and he'd get a beer and lean up against the house on the grassy back, is, like he was sitting there relaxing. And Dolores, she just couldn't stand it. She'd go over there and get on him all the time and say, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then she'd give our neighbor a full report at the end of the day of how many breaks he took and everything. So anyway, when he started coming to our house, which was really funny, he said, Dolores was coming over one day to visit me, and he was out at the front door, and the front door was open and everything, and he looked and he said, oh my God, he said, I gotta get out of here. He says, here comes Mrs. Kravitz. And so, lo and behold, that's her name now. In the whole neighborhood, we call her Mrs. Kravitz. And I have a friend that lives in Nashua, New Hampshire, and we talk every single night. And she always asks me, how's Mrs. Kravitz? But I just wanted to share that story with you because he named her Mrs. Kravitz, and it stuck, and he was such a good friend to us, and we enjoyed him so much. He came to our house several times for dinner, and he was always busy trying to help us, and he was out there one day washing my car. I said, what are you doing, And it was just, and we're really going to miss him, and I'm really sad because I did try to contact him a while back, and he was so sick, and he did not want Richard and I to see him that way because he just refused our offers of, wanting to come and see him, whatever. He just said, no, I can't see you because I'm just too sick. I don't want you to see me like this. So when we heard that he passed away, and believe it or not, it was Mrs. Kravitz that brought the newspaper over to me a few days ago and said, Jim Doherty died. And I looked at the paper and I said, oh my God, that's terrible, because we really didn't get to see him. And Richard's been, really sick, and he's had his health problems, and he was just so sad. And anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you. He was a love, and we loved him, and he was a wonderful person. And that's all I gotta say.
Thanks,
And it's nice meeting you,
Nice to
Janice.
meet you. So, Kathy?
Okay, I'm gonna take a turn.
Okay.
So, Jim came to my father-in-law's memorial. Didn't know my father-in-law very well, but he knew my husband. And he stood at my father-in-law's memorial and said the nicest things. And then he was at my dad's service, and he stood and he said the nicest things. And then he was at my mom's service, and he said the nicest things again. And a few days after the service, I received in the mail a letter from him, beautifully handwritten, thoughtful, used some of his poetry skills, I guess, to write a very nice letter to me. So it's appropriate that I'm up here talking about him. So Jan and I, and our friend Jeannie, who lived in her house.
Jenny's house.
Jenny's house. We're about the same age, and we're kind of a trio, the three of us, and we met each other about age 3, and we've stayed friends all these years. And Jim and Bill, Jan's big brothers, and Jeannie's big brother they were roughly the same age, and we were like, what were we, 6 years, 7 years younger? We were a little younger than they were. So they didn't pay a whole lot of attention to us, but we knew what they were up to most of the time. And I do remember a lot seeing Jim in the garage working on something. He would take scraps of things and put them together to make something as a kid. When we were kids, we really didn't have a lot. They had those beautiful bikes, and we were outdoor kids. We did a lot of hiking and roller skating on the sidewalk and bicycle riding and we played softball in the alley and kicked the can and things like that. But I do remember Jim liked to make things, and he'd find something to recycle into something else. Maybe, like baby buggy wheels into a go-kart, something like that. And so one of my really special memories of those big boys was that they built some platforms in the Sabiston's trees. And so when I was in college the second time in college, okay, in 1991, I had a little assignment. I was supposed to take a poem and turn it into, I was supposed to take an author, a book, but this is for my child lit class. I was supposed to take an author and not plagiarize, but I was supposed to use their style and write a little piece. So this is a little piece I wrote, and I did just a little tiny bit of adapting here, but so when I was young, my friend Jeannie and my friend Janice, Jeannie had a tree house, and actually it was not much of a house at all. The big boys nailed lumber scraps together to make a rickety platform. Then, when they tired of it, we, Jan and Jeannie and me, made it into our secret spot. I remember having tea parties while we sat high in the branches of the old apple tree. We told secrets and ate popsicles and talked about being grown-ups. We shared dreams that cannot be shared while sitting on the ground. It was a tree house, a free house, a secret you and me house. Now I'm a grown-up. I live in a street house, a neat house. Be sure and wipe your feet house. Jeannie, Jan, and I are still friends. And once in a while we get together and tell secrets and eat popsicles and talk about when we were children. But when I see that old tree house, free house, our secret you and me house, I will always think of my friends. And now I will also always remember the boys that built it.
Thank you. Thanks, honey. Yeah, my mom would come out on the back porch of our house and go, "Oh!" We had 2 spots.
Well, I met Jim through Jan, who's been a good friend to me for many years. And Jim was a political friend, because Jim always kept up with politics, and whenever I'd see him, he'd talk to me about the terrible things that are going on in the world, and I think I see lots of nods. We all sort of feel that way. But Jim was a great guy. I mean, he always had a joke. Sometimes it was the same joke. but he, there was a lightness about him, and I'll miss him.
Exciting. That was Bonnie Mayer. This is Michaela Dietzel.
So I'm also a Jan friend, and that's how I knew Jan. Many times when I would come to visit Jan, Jim would be in the house. He would say hi and usually wander out. A few years ago, it would be to work in the yard or do some chore. And recently with his illness, just to kind of say hi and then disappear again. But I often saw Jim at the hospital. When Jan was in the hospital, and I would be in the waiting room with Jim, and more than once he would say, "Jan is so good to me." And I don't know how often he shared that with Jan, but he so treasured how much living the last 4 years with Jan, her patience. And I know Jan thinks all she was impatient with Jim, but that's not true. She was such a loving sister to him, and really to her whole family. Jim is the last of Jan's family, except for all of us.
Thanks.
We love you.
Thank you, Annie. He did say he liked me.
Hi, I'm Roger, Kathy's husband. I'll try to make this brief. 2 parts. First, Spokane's a small place. So, Kathy grew up with Jim, but then I'm a retired attorney, so I have that in common with Michaela's husband, Mark. And back in the late 80s, early 90s, Mark and I practiced in the same law firm. And I think that I had a little tiny bit to do with the fact that Mark developed an interest in doing adoptions, because Kathy and I are adopted parents, and at that time I was doing a lot of adoptions, and Mark expressed an interest, and maybe there was a little mentoring involved, but he's far outshone me as far as the wonderful things he's done on the legal side of the world of adoption. Real quickly, being an attorney, it was rare, but I did do a lot of probate work, and it was rare, but on one occasion I was the personal representative of the estate. It turned out to be very interesting. And one small part of it was, this gentleman lived in a small house in northeast Spokane, and how should I put this kindly? It was going to be quite a chore to get it cleaned out, let me put it that way. And so we engaged, so it was a 4-person job to get that done. It was Jan and Jim and Kathy and me. Took us quite a few weekends, if I remember correctly, mostly on weekends, because we had jobs at that time during the day, on weekdays. But we took breaks, and took lunch breaks, and that's when I got to know Jim. And that made what could have been a really horrible experience a wonderful experience, because he had me in stitches the whole time. And it's a great memory I have of Jim.
Oh, that's neat, Roger. Thanks. Thank you. That's him singing again. He liked Elvis too. Actually, our grandma liked Elvis and the modern stars of the 50s. And people were all fussing about Elvis, and she said, "Oh, give the kid a plug." And so she enjoyed it. And she would share movie magazines with Jim, and he remembered so much. He had a terrific memory. I don't know if those of you who like cars and trucks and things, Jim could see a hubcap, from the older cars, and he knew the model, the year, the whole thing. And actually, when they were 3 and 4 years old, making their first trip back to North Dakota, the boys were identifying every car on the road. My mom could never get over it. So he went through a lot of cars in his life too, those of us who know him. I think it was 120 or something, because sometimes they didn't last long. So, well, it looks like we have talked out, but there is so much food, and so please feel more than free to help yourself, and take something home and take it to your neighbor, whatever. We'll work it out. I want to thank you again for being here, and for taking so much of your day-to-day to be here and to help us remember Jim. He was a good man. He did have a kind heart. And I know there are many people that wanted to be here today, but we've got a number of people that are not feeling well and different things, so not able to get here. Two of the friends in the back, Kathy and Carol, know Beverly, Bo and Ellen, yeah. And Beverly and Jim went to kindergarten together, so I've been in phone contact with her. I usually get about, I'm the old one in the neighborhood now, and I get about 10 cards from the kids, many of them in their 80s at Christmas time. So it's a really a nice thing. So thank you, and can't think of anything else. So that's time for silence. Okay.